I guess I get started then. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. I will talk about standardized platforms or standardizing platforms. And one of the perks of speaking on day 2 is you don't need to ask new questions. So this one might be familiar to you already from yesterday's session by Dotan. Who of you is using internal platforms at work already as of today? OK, quite some. That's good, actually, because then to some of you I will tell you something new, hopefully. Because 80% of engineering organizations will establish a platform engineering team by 2026, according to a Gartner report, which I can link but not show because I didn't pay the thousands of euros. But yeah, so why is that, and how could you go over creating such a portal or platform is what I will try to go into detail further in this talk. But first, a few things about myself. My name is Daniel Botke. I'm a platform advocate at NVS. We're a cloud provider from northern Bavaria, so quite close to here, actually. We offer managed Kubernetes, managed databases, virtual private clouds, the usual stuff. I used to be a systems engineer, then went into consultant, so I did some sorts of platform building with clients over the last 3 to 4 years before I switched to my current position. And these days I focus on Kubernetes, platforms, and especially GitOps. So what is a platform? Let's do the groundwork. Let's get a definition for that. And we need to ask us the question, is a platform something we buy off the shelf? So Spotify recently started offering Backstage as a service for companies, so you can actually buy it off the shelf now. There's a few other vendors out there with their offerings. Is it something you build yourself, mash all the pieces together, try to make sense of them all on your own? Or is it maybe something like this, the thinnest valuable platform, just some good documentation of streamlined processes within your organization? And the answer really is, it can be all of those, or any of these. It really depends on your use case, on the maturity of your engineering organization, and what you want to make out of it. And the CNCF platforms white paper, I think Dotan mentioned this one yesterday as well, says that a platform is an integrated collection of capabilities defined and presented according to the needs of the platform's users. And the two things to note down from this definition are that it's an integrated collection of capabilities, so you don't send your engineers out into your IT landscape to 20 or dozens of different places to find the things they need to click the buttons they need to click, but you need to integrate them, you need to collect them, centralize them in a way or another. And the other thing is, it needs to cater to your platform's users' needs. Handle your platform as a product. Don't build the thing you want, build the thing your users want. And in other words, that comes down to platforms needing to help solve common challenges throughout your organization, provide golden paths for processes, establish a consistent look and feel in the perfect world. So think about UX design, cater to a variety of autonomous teams, be it data engineers, DevOps teams, business logic application developers. And in a perfect world, you do this throughout your engineering organization as a whole. So everybody gets onboarded, everybody can use it. But that sounds very cumbersome and might be a long way, you might think now. And why would you go over all this burden, all this work, and actually build a platform? Well, the easy answer is because it will be worth it. Maybe you remember DevOps, and we had those walls between teams, and people would throw code over fences, and people would have to make sense of the delivery pipelines all over again, figure out how to handle the code they've been thrown over the fence, and then pass it on to the next team, QA or operations, or depending on which part of the process you are located at. And the solution to this was to just tear down those walls, start communicating with each other, streamlining processes, make sure everybody's on the same page, and collaborating most of all. And platform engineering can be similar, as in, again, we have different teams with different needs, consuming different kind of resources, having different processes in place, but sometimes there are commonalities, right? Everybody might need some kind of pipelining. Many teams might need some sort of message queue or message broker. There's databases involved at every part of the stack, more or less. And why not try to build a shared platform around that, build golden paths, build standardized ways to provision those resources, consume those resources, and just make clear that this is where your organization needs to go if they want things to work, or if they need more resources, new resources. And that's really, well, platforms can help your engineering teams, right? It can improve productivity and efficiency. It can reduce operational overhead with golden paths and well-documented processes, or automated processes even. You get a faster time to market for products, features, and patches, if done right. So this is also a finding from the Gartner report I cannot cite. And it establishes a consistency in standards across your organization, which is a very important cultural aspect, in my opinion. So if I got your attention now, we can go over to the next step and think about how to build such a platform. And this is where things get interesting, because you now just take your magnifying glasses and pick your favorite brands and logos from here, and then you can just get started, right? It's also nice and shiny. The CNCF landscape is just so incredibly huge by now that it gets very, very hard to pick the solutions to build your stack off. To make sense of all of this and to pick things that go well with each other, right? And that's why the Kuno project website states internal developer platforms are a strategic commitment, share learnings, and build in the open. Or to say it in Dotan's words from yesterday, don't reinvent when you can reuse and adapt. I really loved his slide, so I just grabbed it for my own. And yeah, that's where the Cloud Native Operational Excellence project enters the stage. It's a project or a framework for bringing together enterprises, mainly to navigate the operational technology decisions, to de-risk their tooling bets, to coordinate contributions, and to offer guidance on available technologies. And what this means is they try to make the least risky decisions whenever possible. So some of the founding members of this movement or community, if you want, are AWS, Nike, Adobe, so large enterprises with a need for internal platforms. And they thought, of course I could pick this shiny solution now, or that shiny solution, but does it integrate well with the next part of my stack? Does my GitOps engine integrate well with the CI/CD solution I have in mind? Is it well contributed to? Is it well maintained? Will it be still available and maintained in 5 years, 7 years even? And I think what really accelerated this idea and motivated this community to get going was the scare around Flux in the beginning of the year when Weaveworks shut down, because there we had a very, very mature, large, well-adopted CNCF project, which was mainly backed by one company who paid full-time maintainers and contributors to maintain it. Yeah, Weaveworks shut down. Luckily, the engineers and maintainers found new places which chimed in and will further support the project. But I think this was a scary moment for many, because they just saw their project in a state where they had like 2 choices: abandon it and rebuild, or fork it and maintain it themselves. Luckily, that was not the case, but situations like this is why initiatives like Kuno might be useful and make sense. And Kuno is built on some tenets. It's still in a very early stage, so this is just to summarize the direction the project is aiming at. The number 1 is open source first. It's easier for companies to standardize on things, contribute upstream, patch things if needed, if it's open source, right? Source available, you can see what's happening, you can try to bug fix, you can provide your own features on top of it, or build around things and quirks you might not like within your stack. So whenever possible, the Kuno framework proposes open source solutions first, mainly from the CNCF landscape. The second tenet then is that it's community driven. So I couldn't find any official governance documents of any kind yet, but again, it's in a very early stage. I think they will be put into place. But at the moment, most of the things get discussed in GitHub issues or on the community Slack, which is a channel on the CNCF community Slack. So stop by if you want to. But there will be proper governance at some point, I'm sure. The third one is CNOE is about tools and not practices, because building platforms is a highly cultural thing. You need to talk to your internal customers, your engineering teams. You need to cater to their needs, and those differ from organization to organization, naturally. So what the CNOE project can do is it can suggest and advise tools that go well together to build a platform around, but they cannot tell you how to operate, configure, and make it feel right for your organization, right? You need to figure that out on your own for your engineers on a case-by-case basis. The fourth tenet is it's powered by but not limited to Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is 10 years old by now. It's not hyped anymore. It's basically a commonality for many organizations, and that makes it a perfect common basis to build a platform upon. So what CNOE states is the things it suggests, the tools it suggests, will run and be operated on top of Kubernetes. Things like ArgoCD, things like Backstage maybe. But it is, of course, not limited to Kubernetes. We have many solutions in place today that allow us to, starting from Kubernetes, orchestrate, provision, and manage the lifecycle of resources and software running in completely different places. We've got KubeVirt for virtual machines. We've got Crossplane with all its providers to manage and provision infrastructure and related things for many other places, not just Kubernetes. So the CNOE initiative really builds on top of Kubernetes, but aims at maintaining your whole infrastructure needs at some point, or organization needs. The fifth tenet then is it's standardized infrastructure customizable by users, and that's something very important that often gets overlooked when building platforms, because they tend to sway in one of two directions. Either you have like small web forms with drop-down menus, you can pick one of 4 values, that's it. And your engineers, and I think that also came up yesterday in the talk, your engineers know about all the flags available to kube control apply. Your engineers know about all the quirks you can do with Terraform, and they know of all the workarounds they can do when reapplying values in a help command, right? So they might end up actually wanting to use those quirks. This is why your platform needs to have some kind of break glass mechanism, right? Your engineers need to be able to escape the golden paths in situations where it makes sense. And this is exactly what this tenet is about. So the platform, the CNOE project is suggesting, is meant to be easily set up and easily configurable in a basic way. And from there on, you're still free to do all the customizations you need or want to do. And you're encouraged to do so, because this is how you build a platform which is catering to your users' needs. The sixth tenet then is, and this is where we get to the demo part in a bit, it's built to be shared. So everything the CNOE project does, from benchmarking ArgoCD with incredibly large workloads, they just did that recently with, I think, Argo workflows, to white papers they write, to software they write, and I will demo one project in a moment. Everything is out in the open, is consumable today already, of course also with the theory behind it. So they've got a tech radar on their website suggesting different solutions for different areas, artifact registries and GitOps engines and stuff like that. And yeah, this is where I want to go deeper into one of those built in the open projects I want to demo, because I just like more interactive kind of presentations. And this is the IDP Builder CLI. IDP is an internal developer platform, of course. And the IDP Builder CLI is hosted on GitHub. It's still in a very early stage. We can see there's quite a few issues. I don't even know if there's a release yet, but I think there is a release 0.4 or something. And it's basically a command line tool for bootstrapping, extending, and developing internal developer platforms locally on your notebook, which is nice because you get a really fast feedback loop and you get put into a position where it's easy to try out things without having to figure out how to configure Backstage to come up for 2 days before being able to try its UI, right? What IDP Builder is behind the scenes, it's basically 2 Kubernetes controllers in a trench code running on your CLI, bringing the cluster in an operable state. The cluster is running in kind, and then you're free to do whatever you want. And the way it does that is by deploying a few core packages. That's what the project calls them. And the first one is ArgoCD. It's a cloud-native GitOps engine, one of the 2 CNCF graduated GitOps engines, the other one being Flux. It deploys Git within your cluster, which is a very lightweight SCM written in Go. So it enables you to do GitOps from within your cluster without having to configure your GitHub organization or repositories in a way that makes that possible. It also deploys Backstage as the centralized front end for all the operations your platform might support at some point, and Crossplane, which is a cloud-native control plane framework. For identity management, it deploys Keycloak. All of that is, of course, integrated with Keycloak out of the box. You don't need to do that. You just get the nice look and feel your users would expect in production as well. And it deploys the external secrets operator to initially set up and propagate all those secrets from different namespaces and stuff within your cluster to set things up and begin with. And this is where I want to share a demo. I already got, let me have a sip of water first. I already got a cluster set up, as you can see here. That takes 5 to 8 minutes, so I was too anxious to start it at the beginning of my presentation, so you can see I did that earlier today in my hotel room. And what it does is it brings up a kind cluster with a bespoke configuration needed for the IDP platform to run on top of it. And then you can see those two controllers in a trench code running on your command line until the desired state is reached. They will shut down, and the IDP is created successfully. It also tells us that I can get secrets to its different projects deployed, to the core packages deployed with a handy helper command. So I don't need to remember all those kube control pipe into base 64 decoding and stuff. And we can start by logging into ArgoCD and have a look what's available to us. So of course, we also get SSL encryption. It's of course not a trusted certificate, but it is TLS encrypted. We get a nice domain name we can tweak. So it really is the proper look and feel you might want to have when trying things out and see if stuff works as you expect it to do. And what we get here is a few applications, all of them bootstrapped by the IDP Builder. We get Argo workflows for cloud-native CI/CD. We get ArgoCD, which we are in right now. We've got Backstage, of course, Backstage templates, so we can start deploying a few things from our IDP right away. Core DNS, of course, with a few patches, so all the internal Gitty stuff works. We've got Crossplane, external secrets, Gitty itself, Keycloak, and on the second page, I think there's just the ingress controller. Exactly. So this is what gets deployed. But how does it get deployed? I didn't create, so this is ArgoCD. ArgoCD is managing it. I didn't deploy any repository on GitHub or anything. In fact, everything gets deployed in Gitty itself. So if we log into Gitty, and again, we can use the IDP Builder help command here, we can see that a few repositories got created for us. And if we have a second look at the local directory tree of the ref implementation, which I deployed to this cluster using IDP Builder, we can see that this resembles the repository structure. So we've got the IDP Builder local dev, which is the prefix of the CLI tool and the cluster name, core DNS manifest, ArgoCD, Nginx, Gitty. Let's just have a look at those few. So we have somewhere we have a gitty.yaml. Can't find it, but it is there. So what I wanted to show is this ref implementation is also publicly available in the repositories. You just point IDP Builder to it, and it deploys it in a GitOps way within your own cluster. And how that works is, let's just have a look at the Keycloak YAML, because it's here in the bottom and I can see it. It's basically just an ArgoCD application CRD with this one peculiarity of this repo URL, which is kuno prefixed. And IDP Builder at deploy time picks up on that and analyzes it and knows, okay, so the intent behind this is for me to create a matching repository for this application inside Gitty, so I can then go on and do GitOps from within my cluster, template it in the correct way, and deploy it. And we can have a look at this in in Git itself. The repository is called keycloak manifests. And in here, we got all the things which are in one of the subdirectories here, in this subdirectory to be precise. So if I go to keycloak manifests, we can see the same resources. So that's a good thing. That's a nice thing, because what this basically means is we can use IDP Builder to build out new applications locally, have them deployed to our cluster, and get to a state where we don't need to use IDP Builder again. So IDP Builder enables us to deploy things to our cluster, including the GitOps state inside of Git, and build on top of it, which enables us to do very rapid feedback cycles and development of our IDP proof of concept, for example, on our local notebook. So let's have another look at how I would go about extending this. IDP Builder calls this stacks, and I prepared a stack in another directory called NWS Crossplane. NWS being our cloud, right? And the goal of this stack is to enable us to deploy VMs in different flavors with different operating systems from Backstage. Because this is something I had to do in my first job very often. I was on the infra team. We had developer teams calling all day because they were not allowed in our vCenter. Could you please spin up another developer machine? I need RHEL 6 with 8 gigs of RAM. I need to try some stuff. I need to bring up a database. So this was like just at the brink of Docker, right? So VMs were the real deal. And we will do exactly this. So what is in here? We've got this NWS crossplane.yaml. That is, again, just the ArgoCD application, again referencing this local path, which gets turned into a GitOps repository inside of our cluster. And if I go ahead and say, not ref implementation, but instead NWS crossplane, and just point it to the subdirectory, IDP Builder will automatically pick up on the application CRD and does its thing. We can see the controllers running here. Way more interesting, though, is that almost instantaneously, we get the matching repository created inside of Git. It's called IDP Builder Local Dev because, again, it's deployed by or created by our CLI tool in our cluster local dev with the name I told it to have. And inside of this repository, we get a few things. We've got a few crossplane resources needed for the OpenStack provider to come up because we will use OpenStack. We will use the crossplane OpenStack provider to provision the VMs for us. We've got the catalog info.yaml, which is a way for Backstage to make sense of all of this. And then in the subfolder, we've got the information needed to, at the end of our day, deploy this v2 instance of a VM in OpenStack via this Backstage workflow. And we just need to do one thing. Or two things, actually. We need to sign into Backstage. And again, I can use the IDP Builder keycloak to fetch the passwords. And then I need to create or register the new template, which got pushed to the repository. So we already saw it. It's in here. So let's get the... No, that's not right, actually. I need to get the catalog info. Here we go. I need to get the catalog info. Backstage will be able to just read it because the repository is publicly available within our cluster. I can then import the templates inside of there. And I've got a new template here. Took me 3 minutes of deploy time with IDP Builder. And I'm able to provision a VM. So let's do that for the end of our demo. I will call the VM KCD Munich VM. I'm able to pick from a range of available flavors on our platform and also operating systems on our platform. Let's choose something more. Let's choose something with long-time support, at least. I can review this, and I can go on and create it. And at this point, Backstage will run the template with all its stages we saw earlier in the repository. It will just take a moment. We can see here it will generate the component. It will serialize the input we gave it from the drop-down menus. It will write all of this again to a ArgoCD application and customize files because we want to do GitOps. Backstage is just a way for our end users to interact with our GitOps repositories in a governed way. And we publish this repository as well to Gitty. So let's have a look. And indeed, we've got this new repository with the name of the component in Backstage. In there, again, a catalog info, so Backstage can keep track of what it's actually managing. And as promised, the customized structure with an instance v2 CRD, which in turn should create a VM. Let's double check this in ArgoCD. We can see here, nope, first site. Yeah, we can see a new application, also called KCD Munich VM. And the instance v2 apparently is already in a working state. So let me log into our platform real fast. And indeed, we can see that one was created on the 2nd of June, just today. I didn't cheat, I promise. We can go to Horizon, so the proper OpenStack UI, because we can see the actual timestamp there. No shenanigans here. It's the real deal. If it loads the wrong project. OpenStack isn't that fast. Yeah, here we see this machine came up 1 minute ago. So we provisioned this, or even more. I configured Backstage, added this new capability, and deployed a VM all in 5 minutes. And that's really what IDP Builder can do for you. It can enable fast feedback loops. It can enable you to really go fast forward the deployment of your platform without needing any external dependencies. You don't need external EM. You don't need an external SCM. It all runs within your cluster, enabling you to work in a real feeling and real environment that might resemble production without having to bootstrap all those external dependencies in a way that is long-lasting and maybe needs to go through audits and stuff as well. And I think that's really neat. So with this, let's sum it up, because I see I've got 3 more minutes. With IDP Builder, you can bootstrap portable, demoable, and customizable platforms, which helps tremendously in developing them. And platforms in themselves can enable standardized and streamlined processes. We just saw how you can enable your teams to deploy VMs in a way that doesn't need 4 emails back and forth, asking for the flavor, asking for the operating system, maybe asking for the specs. I could just add them as well in the resources, of course. Building platforms is also about empathy. So the Kuno project deliberately doesn't assist in building practices and a culture, but only suggests tools to use for your stack. And it helps and explores further possibilities of building those standards out throughout your organizations by publishing white papers, by conducting benchmarks for popular solutions in the different spaces. And I'd suggest you check the project out if you got the time. Thank you very much. I'm Daniel Botke, and I listed some links here. The slides are available at the link in the very bottom. In there, you can then go on and navigate further to the white paper and the repository and stuff like that. And yeah, thank you very much. And I think we've got around 2 minutes for questions. Microphone is on the way.
So thanks, really nice talk. My question is, in your use case, how would then the developer or whoever ordered the server get access to this server, for example, by getting the SSH key or so?
So Crossplane writes secrets to your cluster if configured in that way with, for example, SSH keys or credentials for a login. And then you would have to adapt your Backstage plugins in this case to pass them on, to propagate them back to the UI, right, for this user, for example. But that's totally doable. Yeah, I forgot to mention that, but this Backstage, as you might have seen, is not the vanilla Backstage. So the Kuno project builds a special image with the Kubernetes plugin already installed, with an ArgoCD plugin installed, with a Gitty plugin installed. Some of those were written by the Kuno project itself to enable you to do all those things I just mentioned out of the box. You don't have to do any configuration of Backstage. But back to your question. So Crossplane, the provisioning control plane I used in the background, is capable of propagating those credentials back to you after provisioning in an automated way. And it's just up to Backstage and the plugins to pass it on to the end user.
For security reasons in AWS, you get one-time message.
Yeah. Exactly. No, Crossplane does that. So something I've seen quite often is that users would actually get access to a namespace in a cluster, namespace as a service, multi-tenancy, and then within those namespaces they could go on and in the portal order stuff like VMs, and Crossplane would know to write the secrets to this namespace, so they would have access to those secrets then, for example. Yeah. Any other questions? I think we've got time for maybe one more. No questions? OK, I'll be around all day. I'll even organize some dinners, so if somebody wants to join, feel free. Let me know, and thanks again.